When somebody screws up, go find them and in front of everybody else, give them a high five. And I have this theory, if somebody's not screwing up every once in a while, they're not making a mistake every once in a while, they're probably not trying hard. The people I worry about are the ones that are never making a mistake because they're playing safe, they're not pushing the boundaries.
Welcome to episode 24. I can't believe there's been 24 of these, Leading with Relevance. It's a podcast series featuring some of today's most prominent leaders. And I like to say they're people busting through the status quo, impacting companies, impacting people, impacting communities. My goal is to interview people around their personal and professional journeys and each leader's why, as Simon Sinek would say. For listeners, we're looking for practical insights you can apply to your own leadership pathway. I'm Tino Mantella, Chief Strategy Officer for Relevance, and I'm loving the opportunity to talk and learn from leaders. And I think every one of the 24 podcasts, well, there's 23, but I'm sure I learned something from John now that we're into 24, that I learned something, and learned something great. And so it's fun for me to talk with leaders and friends and all. So today I have the pleasure of interviewing my friend, John Trainor. John is kicking off actually a three-part series, and we haven't done this before, featuring CIOs and CTOs that have become presidents and CEOs. And I'll have to ask John if that's a trend or a movement somewhere in our conversation here. But before I bring John on the podcast, here's a bit about him. John's celebrating 1 year anniversary as president of Ford Technologies. It's a Prague holding company, and we'll get into that a little bit. He's a graduate of Georgia Tech with a degree in electrical engineering. Prior to joining Ford, he was the CTO of Wahoo Fitness, and before that, he served 10 years as the CIO of Aaron's, where I got to know John when I was running Technology Association of Georgia. His work has been recognized in many circles, including Georgia CIO, where he was the global winner of the 2014 Orby Awards in the global category. John volunteers outside his daily work as he's been on board chair of Georgia CIO, the chair of TAG, and a board member and fundraising leader for Inspire EDU, which is a great organization. If you don't know about Inspire EDU, check them out. On the other side, personal side, John is an endurance athlete, an active biker, swimmer, runner. He's run a number of marathons. Along with his wife, has run a number of marathons and participated in a number of endurance events. And we'll get into that a bit later. And finally, what doesn't show up on his resume is that John is a community leader and always willing to support, mentor aspiring tech leaders. And I've certainly learned a lot from John over the years. So, John, welcome to Leading Relevance.
Thank you. I should have asked you to add one thing to my resume. It's the thing I'm most proud of. I've been married to Heather for about 30 years now, and I've got 3 sons and a daughter-in-law and a couple of grandkids, and that's actually, I think, the best part of my life and the thing I'd want to have on the top of the resume.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. You and I share. We have 2 grandchildren as well, as you know. So they're awful lot of fun. So that's actually a good segue in the first question, because I always like to ask people, and the early part of your life, you were growing up, what shaped you? Maybe a snapshot of early years, 2 or 3 people that influenced you.
Yeah, it's probably the easiest answer, but it's actually the most relevant influences. So it would clearly be my mom and my dad. They never had much money. They always worked multiple jobs. My mom, for a while, was a school teacher, and I'll explain what she did next. My dad always worked at least 2 jobs, and I know there were times where it was 3, working warehouses, managing warehouses, and doing inventories for RGIS, going to stores so that he could do that on nights and weekends and holidays. And we didn't have a ton of money, but they were the first in their families to go to college. And that was a big thing that they instilled in my sister and me, who ended up, she's much more educated and was a college teacher, a professor, much more than I am. And so it's interesting between the 2 of them, though. Very, very different people. They ended up getting divorced when I was about 13, and I learned a lot with that and got a lot of self-reliance, frankly, from that. But
Yeah.
it's interesting. So my mom was a school teacher, and she was well recognized as a really, really good school teacher. People to this day remember Mrs. Trainor, and she just poured her heart into it. And I got to see that. I also had the expectation, even though I had a more technical brain, that I had to have great English skills, and so that has
Yeah.
carried with me. And then she pivoted. Stopped teaching, which is a very safe profession. Maybe you don't make a lot of money, but very safe, and became an entrepreneur and started a company where she did group tours for school groups and senior citizens, and did that until she passed away a few years ago. My dad, on the other hand, he was just known for working really hard and, most importantly, being incredibly kind to everybody. He was just the most kind person. He lived it in his life, and if I could be half as kind and nice and helpful to everybody as him, then that to me is success. So that's really what I would say gave me my early start. Watching their work ethic, watching them take chances, watching them be kind to other people. I've tried to live that.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, then you took a path that sounds like it was a bit different than your mom and your dad, electrical engineering at Georgia Tech. How did you decide on that? When did you get that tech brain, as you talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I really hide it well, but I've been a nerd my whole life. I was soldering, little radios that I would take apart when I was 6 or something. And I really thought I wanted to be an electrical engineer because I loved acoustics and amplifiers and sound and those kind of things. And that's a good path for an acoustics engineer. Turns out I was a terrible electrical engineer. There are electrical engineers that graduate from Georgia Tech, and there are people that don't graduate from Georgia Tech. And I'm right on the edge between the two of those, where I get to say I graduated, but just barely. And luckily, not a lot of people asked me what my GPA was. But while I was co-opting as an electrical engineer, I fell into something. And there's this hip hop artist from Georgia named Bubba Sparks, and he has a line that says, "I didn't choose Ryman, Ryman chose me." And that's exact same thing for computing with me. Computers just immediately made sense. Any electrical engineering class I took that was related to a computer, if they said the word computer in it, I'd get an A in it automatically without even studying. Everything else got barely passed. And it just like made sense to me. And so that's how I got funneled into computing. And just because it was something that I've loved.
Yeah, that's great. And you didn't go ever decide to or look at moving into computer program or anything like that. You kind of did it sounds like anyways, while you were in school or outside of school.
Yeah, I was going that path, but I was taking every elective that I could at Georgia
Yeah.
Tech, and eventually Heather and I met, and she put her foot down and said, "It's time for you to graduate now," because I just was taking everything I could. But I was far enough along in the electrical engineering catalog that it would have been a lot more time, and I would have gotten in big trouble if I'd switched to computer science. So I have a specialization in computer engineering and one in
Okay.
French. That was another elective that I just kept taking. So it's kind of computer adjacent, but it is an electrical engineering degree.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So totally switching gears, you did mention being a parent and a grandparent, and now you're head of a organization. So talk about how being a parent and grandparent influenced the way you build teams and make high stakes decisions.
Yeah, it's interesting on that. I coached my sons in soccer for about 12 years. I played soccer my whole life growing up, played until I realized it was reckless to do so, 10 years ago or so I stopped. But anytime I coached, I always had three rules. And you could probably go to some of my former kids that I coach right now and ask them. And there was number one rule: have fun. If you're not having fun, I want you coming off the field. I do not want you out there, because the whole goal here, I want you to love this game the rest of your life, even if you're not going to be a professional. And the
Yeah.
number two was listen to coach. And that goes hand in hand with having fun. And then the third one is hustle. And what I told everybody on those teams is, if you do those things, we are going to have a great season. We might lose every game, but if you do those things, we're going to have a great season, because we're going to have fun. You're going to gain skills, and you're going to work hard the whole time. And you're going to know you did everything you could to win, even if you didn't win. And I had seasons where we won every game, and I had seasons where we lost every game. Actually, we had a season where we lost every game and tied the last one. I told them that's the perfect season because that shows you that you made progress. But and I like to bring exactly that, not intentionally, but I think I try to bring that into what I do to lead organizations. I love having fun. I think you've got to have fun. You're spending a lot of time with folks at work, and you need to enjoy it. And nothing's that serious. I mean, stuff's serious, but not that serious. And you have to listen to each other. You have to listen to leadership to make sure you're fully aligned. And then you got to hustle. And if you do those things, you're going to have a great career. I don't know how you're going to have a great career, but you're going to have a great career.
It's so next question is similar, but it's interesting that, and I can kind of identify this because I was, all the way through high school and actually into college, played football and wrestling. So one is such a team sport and the other is such an individual sport, even though, as you know, sports are all about team, even if you're an individual, but you're an endurance athlete, which means you're spending a lot of time on your own, running, swimming, biking, etc. But you're also talk about team. So in terms of your leadership style, I'm sure there's this personal intensity, determination comes out as fun a lot of times, I know with you, but talk about that, how that's, that kind of contrast has influenced your leadership style.
Yeah. I think that endurance sports, while you do end up doing them typically on your own, unless it's like a relay, like Hood to Coast or something,
Yeah.
which is an awesome team event. Great team building, but it's painful. Um, if you it is very individual, and
Yeah.
triathlons are inherently individual because
Yeah.
you're not allowed to draft off other people and things like that. However, uh, not every, most all successful endurance folks that I know have a strong community. They have running partners that they get together with and run with because you get that accountability partner.
Yeah.
Miles go so much faster when you're running with somebody. I'd say, even though I'm traveling a lot now, so it's a lot less, but anytime I'm in town, I'd say 80% of the time I'm running with Heather. And we're going out and making and usually one of us doesn't want to run then, and that
Yeah.
one of us, the other one, makes the other run, and so it ends up being a team thing. There's a Saturday morning run group that we've been meeting with for, I don't know, 15 years now. We don't make it every Saturday, but we know that people will be there, and frankly we just run so we can have a nice breakfast afterwards. But that's the team aspect of it.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing you can apply to the business world is that a marathon doesn't happen the day of the marathon. A marathon happens for months in front of the marathon. The marathon itself is an end result of your preparation. And I think that 100% translates to work. You don't just show up and magically things happen. You have to plod through things every single day, be relentless, be consistent. And when you do that, great things are going to happen. You may not know when they're going to happen. You may not have an event of a marathon where, boom, it's going to be successful. But that is a key aspect that I get from endurance sports.
It sounds like what you're saying too is people often say, life and work, business in the sprint, but it's a marathon. And when you go into work and the things you're doing now and the things you've done in your career, is that the way you kind of look at it? Like, do you go in one day and say, got to get this done? Or are you able to, through your maybe athletic background or any other, your family or whatever, kind of looking at it as longer term or?
Yeah, and I say this, I've said this a lot to my sons and daughter-in-law. Um, I don't know how hard work is going to turn into success in your career, but I know hard work does turn into success in your career. And um, people know when people are working hard and trying to win and trying to help others. They just know it. And it may not be obvious. You may be in a terrible situation today, but it's going to turn into something great because whatever you're going through right now, and that's the same thing with marathon training. There are runs that you do where you're in the peak of your season training, you're going to have a terrible run because you're tired, your body's not ready, it needs to recover. That's part of training for the marathon. And pushing through it and getting done with it is okay. I also love the fact I got this from tech where I almost got kicked out. And I've had this a few times in work, but I've also really experienced it in a very acute way in endurance training, or sorry, in endurance events. You can handle a lot more than you think you can handle. And there are times
Yeah.
where you just want to give up. You're at the bottom, the pit of your existence, and you find a way to dig yourself out. That's actually why I do endurance events, because I want to see if I can come back from that.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that point. And just before we get off endurance and marathons and running, I know you don't just do marathons, but how many marathons have you done and other major events? And then I know Heather put you to shame, so how many
Oh
has she
yeah.
done?
Yeah, yeah. There, you have to have a logarithmic scale to look at Heather's marathons versus mine. So I've done 13 full marathons, a handful of halves. I've done a couple of half Ironman triathlons. I've never done a full Ironman, and then I've just done longer rides and things like
Yeah.
that. So yeah, yeah. But she's at 153 full
Oh my God.
marathons. Done every continent, every world major, including Sydney, which just got added, every state in the U.S. So yeah, it's a lot.
Maybe I should have been interviewing her instead of you, John. I don't
100%. Yeah, much more
know.
interesting. I'll tell you
Just
that. Yeah.
okay, so switching gears a little bit. You've spoken quite a bit over your years. I've heard you and I've read about it too, psychological safety. And so how do you actually operationalize that, in a high performance environment? Obviously, those things should go together, but also high performance and psychological safety might also be in conflict.
Yeah. One practice, it was easier when everybody was in one office together back in the days, but one practice that I found really valuable is when somebody screws up, go find them and in front of everybody else, give them a high five.
Hmm.
And I have this theory: if somebody's not screwing up every once in a while, they're not making a mistake every once in a while, they're probably not trying hard. The
Yeah.
people I worry about are the ones that are never making a mistake because they're playing safe. They're not pushing the boundaries. Now, I don't want somebody who makes the same mistake over and over again. I don't want somebody who's reckless, but I want people who do that and then commit to learning, because I think that's the second part of it. When there is a failure, and there will be failures, anybody thinks it won't be failures, you're not cut out for leadership. There will be. The focus at that point should be on how do we get better next time? What can we do to prevent this? We're going to be just as stupid in the future as we were today. How do we prevent ourselves from falling in to that pit of failure, and let's fall in the pit of success? And then along with that, I think it's important that I need to own when I make errors. I actually just made an error on something, and it was a total miss. And I needed to say to the whole team, "Hey, I made a mistake on this. It was a big
Yeah.
mistake." And if you have a fragile ego, and you can't, ego just kills leaders. And if you have a fragile ego and you can't admit it, there's no way that other people will. And if people aren't willing to, you can't get that psychological safety.
Yeah, and I've seen too, and I think you'll agree with this, showing vulnerability actually makes a big difference for your team that you're human and you're not on there on a pedestal. And also
Yeah.
that's a really good point. So as you know, you're kicking off a three-part series with our buddies Sean Kramer and Jay Farrow, moving from tech leaders to a CEO role or president role. Um, and so for you, what's been the same and what's different? Accountability, authority, whatever, however you want to frame that.
Yeah, yeah. I first of all, I'm understudies of both of those, and specifically Jay. I've been following his career, and all along the way, I just go, I wish I could be as good as this Jay Farrow guy. But and I've seen things from them as I've talked to them. They've actually helped me. Specifically, Jay has helped me with this transition, so it's really nice. But um, I think a bunch of technology leaders miss this, but The goal, regardless of technology or not technology, is to find a great way to get great results for
Yeah.
your stakeholders, whether it's your customers, your board of directors, I don't know what it is. And then that turns into great results for your business and your career. And uh, it's the same thing in a general leadership role. It's just some of the tools you have to do that are different. You're going to focus on some marketing, on some finance, and things like that. Now, if you are a good technology leader, everything you're doing along the way is preparing you to be a general business leader. Uh, Way too many um, technology leaders get distracted by shiny objects and whiz bang and solutions over or problems that get solved. And so I think you need to prepare yourself all along the way. And then once you do that, it's actually not a big difference. It's just you have different subjects that you have to cover.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, from a standpoint of looking at the finances and other things, as you said, it sounds like that you're doing that. But back when I ran tag, we used to make a joke in the early days when you were probably still a young guy at Georgia Tech. But we used to talk about technologists, they'd be in the back room and you'd slide a pizza under the door. You weren't sure what they were doing in there, but you knew something good was happening. And then all of a sudden, 10, 20 years, let's say 2 decades back, things started changing. And technology leaders got a seat around the board table. Certainly security has made a difference with that. So, do you think the positioning of CIOs, CTOs, CISOs is going to make it more, I'll just say, make it easier for them to make that leap into the CEO, or president role?
Yeah, I think, and it's amazing we've gotten through 20 some odd minutes, and I haven't mentioned AI yet, but
I know.
um,
We've got
I
that coming.
think AI will be a sorting mechanism for exactly that, Tino. I
Okay.
think that you have technologists that can't be they're more like order takers than they are problem solvers. And then you have problem solvers.
Yeah.
The problem solvers now have a superpower. And in fact, they have a bigger superpower because they have early access to it, and they understand it. And those are the technologists, the technology leaders that are going to do really well. Um, the ones that are order takers, they're not going to benefit as much from it. And in fact, it's actually an existential risk to their position if they don't have that lean forward attitude and they've got a lean back attitude. Um, so, so I think this is a great time to do that. What I would tell a technology leader who wants to pivot to more general business leadership is you can't just use the advancements with AI for technical purposes. I probably talk to AI 80% of every day now.
Wow.
Um, and I would say 60% of that is on finance and strategy and planning. Um, and it's not technology because I've got these skills that are helpers to complement what I'm able to do. I'm fine with technology subject matter. I am not where I need to be in other parts of the business. And so I use AI as a coach to get me up to speed more quickly.
Wow. That's really interesting. Um, So, from a standpoint of Four, the company you're with now, and I'm not surprised about this, but it and you, I think, came in maybe not quite for this whole period, but I understand there's been 9 consecutive quarters of growth. So, congratulations on that. And what's the secret? How have you been able to jump in there and make things? I know
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
team effort.
Yeah. So it's been actually, we just had our earnings release a couple weeks ago. And so we have now 10 consecutive quarters of not
Wow.
just growth, but in revenue of triple digit growth. And
Wow.
last year I was there for a half the year. The team was going to do this without me. I could only hurt them probably, but the last year the team made profit for the first time. This year, we have announced publicly that we'll do that, and we'll expand our adjusted EBITDA margin a bit. You can go look that up. We did an investor day recently. It's worth looking at. And how have I been able to quote unquote do that? I I have, and people say this all the time, and I've jokingly said the opposite of this back at Aaron's, but I have a phenomenal team. My biggest worry was the team when I was joining. I've got a CTO. I've told him this at least 3 times. He is a better CIO than I ever came close to being. And so I'm very fortunate that Oren is as good as he is. He is the power for the company. And my job is to be what we call the unworthy messenger of that. Let me tell the story. Let me help align everybody. Let me get rid of problems for him that prevent him from solving the problems of our customers. And just we have a moniker, LFG, which obviously everybody knows, let for grow. That's what the acronym stands for. And all the time, I just want to do whatever I can to enable the team to let for grow. That's my job, let for grow. And so now I think I've been helpful in some ways. We are maturing as a business. We're relatively small. We'll do between, I think, 140 or plus million this year in revenue. And we're doing it with a team of less than 30 people. And wow. That's a very small team, very good results for a very small team. We're very lean. We're AI first. We operate the whole company with AI, not just technology. But for that small team to be able to put up numbers like that, they've got to be hitting on all cylinders. So if I've done everything, it's continuing that progress and making sure that we're set up for success. And then the reality is we're a public company. We're inside of a public company. We are scaling. We're growing. We have to do certain things a little bit more differently as we scale. And I have 2 jobs. It's preserve the fast growth startup nature that we have while also preparing us for what it means to be a really big company.
Yeah, that's great. And for those of you that don't know John, I can say that he's a very modest man, and that's what so many people appreciate about you, John. So thank you for, just the way you are. So Four has had explosive growth, as you've just talked about. Is there a decision you made that looked risky at the time, but proved to be critical in terms of, looking back now?
Yeah, I mean, probably one of the earliest. We're all about making sure that we underwrite every single transaction for our customers. So that is tricky because we have to make sure the customer is going to be successful and we're going to be successful. And early on, I had to make some decisions around that, and I didn't have a lot of context for the business. I once again relied heavily on the team and took a lot of we had a lot of conversations about it, and we made a decision that altered things. It ended up turning out really well, so I got very fortunate there. But it could have been a bad decision.
Yeah.
Another one is marketing. We did no paid marketing before I started. Now the team was ready to do paid marketing, but we did none before. And it's a little scary when you're comping over $0 spend to spend in the millions. Like you have to have a lot of confidence in what you're doing. And we try to de-risk that risky thing through analytics, understanding data, knowing what's going on. But in reality, it's a risk. So I would say those are probably the 2 big things that have been risky so far.
Similar question, but at scale, speed and discipline are often at odds, right? So how do you decide when to move fast versus when to slow down?
Yeah, I actually think discipline creates speed. Lack of discipline creates slowness.
Interesting.
And what I mean by that is it's especially when you can automate your discipline. If you can automate your discipline, then you're operating within safe parameters, but you're able to do it at speed. If you don't have a lot of discipline, you stub your toe, you have unexpected things happen, you maybe question what's going on. So one way to approach it that has worked pretty well is I want to distribute the decisions to every part of the organization so that it's not me making a decision. I want it fully distributed. I do know, though, that there will be people that make wrong decisions maybe 20% of the time. I would rather have a series of very fast decisions 80% of the time and a stubbing the toe 20% of the time to unlock the rapid growth and progress that you can get from that. However, there are classes of decisions. I think this came from a Bezos analogy. They're the one-way door and two-way door decisions. The two-way doors where you can go in the door and back out the door. You can do that whenever you want to. Make those decisions immediately. Like make them with less information than you would want. The one-way door, make those much slower than you want to. Get more data than you need to because you can't come back through the door. You've gone through it and it's a one-way direction. And those are some principles that seem to work pretty well.
So you brought up AI before I did, so now I have the right to ask you like a few questions on AI. So
Yeah.
that was our plan anyways, right? So AI is pretty much everywhere, right? But where do you think leaders are overhyping it? And then at Relevance, we're kind of weighing this all the time. Is this a real thing you can do, or is this something that, is going to be for the future or is never going to happen or whatever? And where are
Yeah.
they underestimating its impact?
Yeah. So I unfortunately believe there are technology leaders that know, and this was true of moving to the cloud. They know they need to be champions of AI, but they haven't sat down and spent the time for whatever reason to understand what they're a champion of. Those are the scary ones. Those are the
Mm.
ones that are, let's do AI, but they don't understand what they're saying, let's do. It's similar to people in the cloud days that would migrate a workload from a data center to the cloud. Now they're paying more money because they didn't re-architect what they were building for the cloud. And now you don't get the value that you would want out of it. So I think that it is being overhyped. However, there are people, and I'm starting to see more and more, and I think we're doing this, that are investing the time, and it's time maybe outside of work. I mean, it's around the clock learning because it's moving so rapidly.
Yeah.
That are actually practitioners, doers that are using AI to run their business. That is not overhyped. That you got to know what to use, how to use it safely, what the risks are. But I can tell you firsthand, we are getting significant benefit for our business with using AI.
Yeah. So you touched on a few of these questions, but I ask you one other one. Looking ahead 5 years, what will distinguish companies that win with AI from those that merely are still experimenting?
If you do not have a CEO who will use AI to do real business, and I don't mean a better version of Google, I mean doing real business, if you have a top down, you should use AI, but the person at the top's not using it, you will not have successful AI. You just can't will it into existence. You have to understand it because it is pervasive to everything you do within the organization. We have a living brain that that everybody at Four, it's called 4OS, and it is how we contribute all of our knowledge. And that set of knowledge allows me to know everything that's going on. We have this new intern. She started last week. She's absolutely amazing. I get to watch her work go by. She doesn't have to update me, but I know everything she's doing. And she benefits from knowing everything I'm doing strategically because I memorialize everything in the brain as the president of the company. So she doesn't have to guess what to be aligned with. It's all right there. So I think you need to have people actually using AI or you've got a problem.
I like to ask this question to the leaders that I have a chance to talk to on the podcast, but many times we learn as a leader more by failure or misstep than we do from, opportunities where we win. Do you have an example or something where you've
Unfortunately, it's hard to pick, right?
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
yeah, I most of the I will tell you most of the failures are when you don't. I won't mention a few of it because it's usually people stuff.
Yeah.
You don't act as quickly as you should. Um, you know it. Everybody else knows it. And there's nobody that said when somebody leaves, "Wow, I didn't hold on to that person long enough." Now you've got to invest all the time to know that you're making a good decision, and you've got to give that time for that person to be successful and give them the resources they need. But I've had a few of those, and I think that's true for a lot of leaders where they're just not decisive enough. I'll tell you a non-leadership one that probably I look back in my life, and it's probably my biggest failure. And I don't talk about it too much because it's your biggest failure, right?
Yeah.
So I was student body president of Georgia Tech, and I wanted to be the best student body president that Georgia Tech's ever had. And all I did was work on student government. We did amazing things, like absolutely amazing things. Um, and uh, doing that, and then I was also working, and I was also supposed to be doing this thing called school. I didn't do the school part as well, and got to the point where I had to resign my last quarter and not do it because I wasn't eligible. It was like ridiculous, and it was
Oh,
so
wow.
embarrassing, and it was so easy to rectify. And by trying hard to be the best, I ended up cutting short that time. Now we still got a lot done. I'm really proud of what we did. And actually, there's a great guy, Stacy Mollahan. He's the chief legal counsel at Mercedes-Benz US. Great, great guy. Follow him on LinkedIn because you should have him on
Okay.
this podcast too. Because great leader, great AI thought leader too, by the way. But anyway, and he was my vice president. He picked up. He did a great job. And that was just so ridiculous because what I didn't do is I just didn't prioritize and I didn't focus on what was most important and what could derail you. But I will say that was like a nerf environment for me to learn from a really big failure that at the end of the day, it didn't nobody got hurt from it.
Yeah.
But man, have I carried that with me for 35 years now.
Well, and it probably changed a lot of things you did after that, right? Because you learned from it. So that's kind of
Absolutely.
the point of it. We all make mistakes and hopefully you learn from them. So, one of
Yeah.
the things, John, you have grandkids. I've met your great boys. One of them was at Indiana. We national champion football team. He played football. Uh, Great spouse. You do endurance, all kinds of things. I mean, you're an active guy. So, and people always ask me, and a lot of times I'll say younger generation. I want to be fair, and they're always saying, talking about work-life balance. So is that a thing? How do you think about that? Or if a young person came to you and said, look, I want to take this job, but work-life balance is really important to me. Um, how do you think about that? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I will say Aaron's was a very difficult place to work. I worked a lot of hours. There was a high expectation. I worked there for 20 years. There was a really
20
high
years. Okay.
expectation. Yeah, yeah. CIO for 10, but I worked there for 20.
Okay.
And there was a very high expectation to put a lot of hours in. Charlie Loudermilk, the founder,
Yeah.
amazing work ethic. And but that's when my sons were growing up. And what I did is I just tried in the most clever way to do both. And it meant I was tired for
Hmm.
20, 15 years.
Yeah.
I was always tired. It meant I had to because I traveled a bit with Aaron's, it meant I had to get clever. And when I coached soccer, I would coach soccer Friday night and I would play the game Saturday and spend time Sunday. And in those 3 days, I compressed as much time with my sons and wife as I could. And frankly, Saturday, the reason Heather started running marathons is because Saturday was when the Leukemia Lymphoma Society's team in training would train,
Right.
and she did events with them and ended up coaching for them. And that Saturday gave her the ability to decompress from the fact that I was working a lot during the week. So I'm not gonna claim that I achieved a good work-life balance. I think I'm better at it right now. But when I was trying to do it, I was very intentional to be present as much as I could for those boys, and I think and be as involved as I could, and I think
Yeah.
I did a decent job of that.
Yeah. That's great. And I'm sure you did. So thanks for that. We're running out of time, so I'm going to jump to the final question I always like to ask. So if you could leave this is obviously leading with relevance. It's about leadership, is the number one thing we try to get across here. So if you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice regarding relevant leadership today, what would it be?
Yeah, you absolutely cannot fake it with your team. You cannot pretend that you care about them and yet not care about them. Either care about your team or don't care about your team. Jack, actually, when he was a senior and he got that, the coach, the head coach, it's not Signetti who's there now, a gentleman named Tom Allen, loved that guy as a coach and a human being. And if you want your son to be around somebody, Tom Allen's the guy you want your son to be around. And he had a phrase of LEO, love each other. And
Hmm.
the idea was everybody on that team needs to love each other. And his coach's award was the Love Each Other Award. And Jack actually he didn't get the award, but he got a shout out explaining the award because of Jack's attitude to the team. And you can't say you care about your team and pretend you care about the team because it's so obvious. If it's fake, they see right through it. And if you care about your team, they're probably going to care about you. Maybe not, but
Yeah.
you have a better shot at it. And so drop your ego, find out how to really help people with their career, with their personal lives, with their work success, and mean it. And that would be the key thing.
That's great, John. Well, I appreciate you and time. We need to get together soon. So thank you for joining me on Leading with Relevance.